Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and whenever you're tuning in, everybody. It's Rod with Pow Group. Welcome back on The Pursuit of Wealth, your home for MJ stocks, crypto assets, news, and interviews. Also, one of the best MJ community. It's Thursday, May 9th. Earnings season continues. In this video and live stream, we're going to be discussing Green Thumb, Trulieve, and Curaleaf Q1 2024 earnings. We'll do a review and we'll do some analysis as well. I see we have quite a few people joining us. Welcome to the live stream. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'll get started here in about 30 seconds. All right, going to get started in about 10 seconds. See, we have a lot of people joining. Welcome, welcome. Smash the like and share the video with anybody that can jump on last minute. All right, welcome back in the Pursuit of Wealth, everybody. It's Rod with Pow Group. We're going to be discussing Q1 2024 earnings as earnings season continues to roll in. Green Thumb, Trulieve, Curaleaf absolutely crushed it. Curaleaf did have a little bit of a weaker report, but continues to be king in terms of revenue. So we're going to discuss all that and more. We'll take a look at the charts and we'll jump into the chat toward the end. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the earnings report. What stood out to you the most? I actually wasn't able to join all of the earnings calls. I covered SNDL was on their call today. I posted a video on that. They did miss in terms of revenue by a lot, and then they did beat in terms of EPS. So I posted a couple of videos. Also just posted a rescheduling versus descheduling video. Could the USA potentially bypass Schedule 3, and could Congress act to get MJ descheduled? And I think so. So check out that video. But before we get to it, make sure to smash the like. It helps support me in the channel. If you're new, you can subscribe, tick the bell, all that good stuff. You'll be notified on any future videos or when I go live. And as always, this is not financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. You should never buy or sell anything based on anything that I say. And I do own all of these stocks except for Trulieve. The only one I don't own out of these three that we'll be covering today is Trulieve. I own it indirectly through MSOS ETF, but I'm quite happy with my exposure to that. There's some things that I'm not huge fan of about the company, but who knows? I might look to add in the future, but just kind of waiting for a little bit of a lower prices here. And like I said, it's got a pretty big exposure through the MSOS ETF. The analyst estimates, I'll jump into that and hear it in a moment as well, and then we'll jump through some highlights. Again, let me know your thoughts and opinions, what stood out to you the most on all of these earnings reports, but tons of earnings today. We had Planet 13, we had Juicy as well. Who else? We had Juicy, we had TerraSand, Leafly, we had Curaleaf. There's also some news. Colorado lawmakers approve bill allowing MJ retailers to sell food. Cory Booker visits MJ manufacturer in California amid renewed push for federal legalization bill. So again, that's the CAOA. Seems to be garnering a lot of attention, and I mentioned that in my rescheduling versus descheduling video. We have SNDL earnings, and then there's something I wanted to bring up here as well. I'm just curious what everybody thinks of this. The average cost. We had IIPR, Cron sitting on like $855 million worth of cash, USD as well. We had the Cannabis Co., Trulieve, as I mentioned, SNDL, Green Thumb. So lots of earnings. So Nova MJ as well. I covered that during the SNDL video. So OGI is going to be reporting on May 14th. So we've got a little bit of a break here. All the major ones are in. But I'm curious what everybody thinks of this. So this is the average cost of MJ for 1 ounce of high quality. And just curious what everybody thinks about this. The national average price is $326 US. In Canada, there's been a lot of competition, and I would expect that there's going to be a lot more competition in the US, seeing as how, it's the capital market of the world and the biggest economy and GDP. So I would think that there's going to be a lot more competition for these MSOs, than there is LPs in Canada. And then what happens when LPs start to sell in the US, which it's looking like that. Canopy has exchangeable shares, Canopy USA, MSOs becoming LPs, and vice versa. We know that Curaleaf acquired Northern Green Canada, a small operator here in Canada. So it's happening already. And then Canopy and Anchorage, and then SNDL and Sunstream and Parallel, Skyman, etc. So what's going to happen when the LPs start to sell there and we're already seeing them become MSOs. But not only that, let's say LPs never get to sell in the US, which I don't think that's remotely close to being true at all. But let's just say it was only MSOs. Like, the amount of competition just from, their own backyard and companies within the US. Like, yes, it's going to be hard to get barriers of entry, and licenses are expensive, and there's limited licensing. Some states not giving out any more licenses, and you either have to buy them for absurd price, or you have to acquire a company or something like that, right? And then you get their license. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But I personally don't think this is sustainable. Like $326 US, that's like $400 Canadian for 1 ounce of legal MJ. Like, I can buy an ounce of MJ at like Canacabana High Tide. I can buy an ounce for like $50 USD, and it's pretty good quality. It's not like super high quality. I mean, maybe AA or A or something like that, but I mean, $50 US is a far cry difference from $400 US. And you can buy like pretty good quality. Like, I just bought some Tribal drip station indica 23%, and I got an eighth for $20. And that's Canadian. So like, that's like $15 US. And it's like quad A, like, it's fantastic. It's from Cannara Biotech. But all these earnings reports, I'm a little nervous that a lot of and I'm not trying to put a, rain on anybody's parade or anything like that, but I just want to, like, I've seen what happened in Canada, and yes, the US companies are trying to kind of roll out slower, and they're not trying to be everything to all people, but a lot of them do sound like they look fairly similar. But the only thing I just want to caution people on is just be very cautious, because, a lot of these companies in the US, it's kind of reminiscent of Canada. And that's what happened in Canada as well. Is they started off, like $300, $400 an ounce, and that didn't last very long. And now the price wars, and people just left and went to the illicit market. So while these numbers are great, I just want, again, maybe I'm completely wrong and these prices stay the same forever. I can't see it, but eventually that's going to eat into their margins. And we had some fantastic margins from some of these companies, especially Trulieve. I think it was like 58. But I would just caution everybody that, don't forget what we learned in Canada. And that was that, if those prices don't come down, they will go back. Consumers will go back to the illicit market. Believe you me. Like, I would never pay $400. Like, there's just no way. It is almost cheaper to go on a plane and go to Canada and then try to bring it back if it's possible. I'm not sure. But you can only have an ounce or whatever, right? So, but anyways, it's crazy. Like, you might even be able to get a flight to Canada for like $200, buy an ounce for $50, fly back to the US. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. So, plus you get to go to Canada and see the legal market here. So I don't know. I'd just be very, very cautious. But Green Thumb, they reported their first quarter 2024 results. Again, great report. They absolutely crushed their estimates. It was 269.16 million forecasted USD. Came in at 275 and 81 million. And then EPS was forecasted positive 0.0479, came in at positive 0.13. So absolute monster crush there in terms of earnings per share. And then Trulieve demonstrated core business strength and cash generation. As we know, they're very prominent in the medical part of Florida and just dominating Florida, and then adult use potentially on the ballot. Well, it's on the ballot, but could potentially be enacted in summer 2025 if approved, gets that 60% threshold. I think there's a good possibility of it happening. But they came in at 298 million versus forecasted 285.27 million. So they had a pretty big beat there in terms of revenue. And then EPS, they beat, but they were still a loss. So negative 0.1029. So Green Thumb continues to be the shining star and really the probably the de facto leader in this space. But in terms of profitability, negative 0.05 was EPS, earnings per share, for Trulieve. And then Curaleaf, they reported today after market close. And let's see if it updated, but it was 338 point something. I'll bring it up here in a second, but forecasted was 339.85 million, and EPS was negative 0.51. So it came in at 339. They just rounded it up. But if you scroll down, it was actually a little bit lower than that. So it was 338 million. 932,000, so 338.932, and like I said, they were expecting 339.85, so very slight miss in terms of revenue. EPS was forecasted at negative 0.51, and they did have a miss there. If you scroll down, it was negative 0.07. So not a huge miss, but a miss nonetheless. MSOS sitting pretty much flat here after hours, closing at 935, sitting at 936, so not much movement. I think a lot of people today thought there was going to be more movement from some of these names. GRWG, GrowGen, very strong daily uptrend at the moment. Just confirmed a monthly uptrend. You can make the argument here, joining the rest of its peers. Surprising to see that one up today. Even some of the Canadian names today were up, like Cron, up over 10%. CGC was up over 10% at one point, high of the day. I think it was like 10.15 or something like that. Let's see here, 10.18. So it was actually up more than some of these names like Green Thumb and Trulieve and Curaleaf. So interesting to see that happen. And then, as we know, SNDL started getting into the U.S. as well, and we could see some. They even in the interview today, I saw him on the Dales report, and he said that he said shout out to David Klein of Canopy, and getting that basically exchangeable share structure done, and that paved the way for a lot of the other Canadian companies, and that's something that I said we should be watching out for. And then, sure enough, SNDL expanded their presence, so there could be other companies in the U.S. In the Canadian landscape that start to look at the U.S. So maybe that's why we're seeing a little bit of relative strength there. But one thing you can do is just divide HMMJ by MSOS, and we can get an idea of the strength here. And as you can see, we're in a very strong daily uptrend here on HHMJ divided by MSOS. So those two ETFs, and you get a bit of a channel here as well that we seem to be respecting. So we'll see which way we break out of here. But in terms of our longer term time frames, on the weekly time frame, you can make the argument that we're in a weekly uptrend and we're gearing up for an EMA 12 and 26 bull cross. So it's looking like Canadian companies could start to see some relative strength comparatively, at least here in the short term. But we are due for a monthly higher low at some point. This move's all coming off the low, so we're still in a downtrend here, which shows that, you know, we could potentially see some relative strength over the next in the midterm for LPs compared to MSOs, and then a higher low and a higher high. But interesting to see that the U.S. companies weren't up as much today, even after those phenomenal earnings. But we'll just go through some of the information here in the highlights. So it grew. Green Thumb, theirs grew 11% from the prior year period. Cash at the quarter end was $224 million, so sitting on a pretty decent pile of cash. And we already went over the loss. Net income, there was no loss. It was $31 million plus 13 per basic diluted share, and that increased 240% year over year. Adjusted EBITDA of $91 million, or 33% of revenue, increased 19% year over year. Cash flow from operations $84 million, increased 12% compared to Q1 2023, and purchased 1,067,000 subordinate voting shares for a total of $13.6 million. So let me know what stood out the most for you in these reports. I did want to just check. So cash and cash equivalents, total equity. Scroll down here. The margin here. So gross profit, or 52.5% of revenue. The increase in gross margin was primarily driven by revenue growth in the quarter. And then we'll flip on over here to Trulieve. So first quarter performance, $298 million, up 4% sequentially, and 58% gross margin. So again, I have to caution people, like, this isn't sustainable in my opinion. Like, maybe I'm wrong, and consumers are just going to say screw you, black illicit market, and not go back to that market and continue to pay $400 an ounce. But let me remind you here again, in Canada, it's $50 USD. Okay. So just be very, very cautious. We have to remember that, a lot of these Canadian companies were a testing ground. And while the U.S. might learn from that, they might not be immune to all of the same problems, right? And once they uplist to the NYSE and the NASDAQ, you're going to have listing requirements, minimum bid price rule. You could have reverse splits that start to plague the industry. Very high saturation with the number of companies and producers. We don't need thousands of producers. There's probably going to be more producers in the U.S. than in Canada. So if it's saturated in Canada, what makes you think is going to happen in the U.S.? I'm not trying to be a doom and gloom type of person. I own these companies, but I would just very caution people. I see the the narrative out there that, you know, MSOs are the only thing worth owning. Well, that's not true, because Canadian companies are becoming MSOs, and U.S. companies and MSOs are becoming LPs, right? It's going to be vice versa. We're going to see global. They're going to be international, right? So just make sure you learn your lessons from the Canadian stocks. It's not, like I said, there might not be the same issues. They might even run into different issues, but there's going to be huge capex as they start to expand throughout the U.S. and internationally, right? And that's why Curaleaf isn't as profitable, is because they're not focusing just on a few key states. They just bought a Canadian operator, and they just bought, they're in Germany as well. So in the rest of the UK, like their international footprint is very diversified as well. And I think that's why it almost kind of resembles a Canadian MJ stock, right? Because they're kind of taking that same approach. And the Canadian companies in Curaleaf have a big head start with regards to, you know, even that oversupply. Once, you know, Germany starts to ramp up, I think it was SNDL that said they sold, pretty sure it was SNDL. I think they said they sold like 4 times this amount in the first quarter than they did all of last year to Germany. So things are starting to heat up there in a big way, but not downplaying the reports and the amazing metrics that they achieved. Strong cash flow from operations, 139 million, and free cash flow of 124 million in Q1 2024. And remember, like if this company, you know, if adult use is on the ballot and improved, you know, like Trulieve's gonna soar. And I remember, you know, I think it was Alan Brockstein that said, you know, basically it's a sell leading into the rescheduling and adult use and earnings, blowout earnings. Like, I mean, that I would never say that. I would just say be very cautious when, you know, for the long term, because a lot of these issues are probably going to be prevalent in the U.S. companies, similar to what the Canadian ones had to experience. Maybe not to the same degree, but I think they're still going to be there. Like it's going to be somewhat similar. We're going to see price wars. We're going to see consolidation. We're going to see saturation in the market, both retail. Look at MedMen, just absolutely destroyed, 5 CEOs going bankrupt. Definitive progress made on Smart and Safe Florida adult use initiative and federal rescheduling at MJ to Schedule 3. So again, all CEOs starting to cover it as well. All right, going through, achieved GAAP gross margin of 58% with gross profit of 174 million. Net loss of 23 million, an improvement of 31% sequentially. Cash at the quarter end was 327 million, so sitting on a pretty decent pile of cash as well. And inclusive of 50 million in tax refunds from amended returns related to our challenge of 280E received during the first quarter. And Ascend Wellness is kind of taking the same approach, and most should see that amongst all the other companies as well, potentially. Opened 3 new dispensaries in Cocoa Beach, Palm Bay, and Pinellas Park, Florida. I think they're looking to add like 25 stores this year, and ended the quarter with 31% of retail locations outside of the state of Florida. All right. I think that's pretty much it for this one. All right, moving on. We'll take a look, a little bit of a longer video here today, but we'll take a look at Curaleaf. Some of the highlights here. So as I mentioned, they did miss in terms of EPS and revenue. And like I said, I think that's a lot has to do with because they're focusing on international and just became an LP as well. They acquired a Canadian operator. And Curaleaf said they're in discussions with U.S. major exchange about potential uplisting. So the NASDAQ is starting to warm up, apparently, to Canadian companies with exposure to the U.S. So think of SNDL and Canopy. So if that's the case, and Curaleaf said they are speaking to an unnamed, you know, U.S. major exchange, it's probably the NASDAQ. If the NASDAQ said they're warming up to Canadian companies with U.S. operations. So if that's the case, we could see Curaleaf uplifts to the NASDAQ in the not too distant future. So first quarter revenue, like I said, rounded up 339 million, representing an increase of 2% year over year. So a bit of a stall there, an adjusted gross margin of 48%, so a little bit lower. And again, when you're expanding into international and Germany and things like that, Canada, that's obviously going to eat into your margins, right? First quarter 2024 adjusted EBITDA 77 million, representing 23% of revenue, a 40% basis point improvement year over year. Cash flow from operations 46 million and free cash flow of 33 million. Repurchased 15 million of our December 2026 notes at 7.75% discount. And again, all of it's in US dollars. So Boris Jordan goes through some comments here. Matt Darren We are laser focused on expanding our global reach of our brand portfolio. Select, Grassroots, Curaleaf, and 420 in Europe leading the way. In the first quarter, our team gained 33 basis points of the total market share across all BDSA states, expanding our share in some of the largest markets throughout the U.S. Our wholesale advantage is growing steadily, and we continue to innovate. And wholesale is where the margins are, for sure. And we continue to innovate with new products consumers love. Our unique exposure to most significant catalysts on the horizon: New York market, Pillar 1 in Germany. Also, Germany's looking to fast track Pillar 2. So it's going to be happening a lot sooner potentially than most people expected. So the fact that that happened, that's kind of why I made this video here as well, descheduling versus rescheduling. I think that could entice the U.S. lawmakers and Congress. They never want to be first, but they never want to be last. And if Germany's fast tracking it, and Canada's over 5 years old, 5 years young at the federal level being legal, what's the rest of the EU going to do, right, when Germany's fast tracking? So they're probably going to feel the pressure. And then the dominoes just keep falling, right? And then more and more states. Pennsylvania is pretty much a done deal. Ohio's coming online this month, I believe, if not already. And then Florida potentially, right? So they mentioned that Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania set up a robust growth in 2025 and beyond. And as Boris Jordan said, this is a return to growth. Global MJ industry is still in its infancy, and we are confident that the foundation we have built is one for long-term success. I would agree. I think Curaleaf's probably going to be in the top three, if not one of the top. Yeah, I still think Tilray and Curaleaf are probably going to be the top performing companies globally when it's all said and done. But Green Thumb, Trulieve, probably going to be right around there. In terms of there's going to be winners and losers in Canada, U.S. Maybe Canopy ends up being in the top 10. SNDL is probably going to be in the top 10. Maybe we get some from Germany, some from international as well. But yeah, 47% gross margin. Let's see here. Adjusted EBITDA 76.7 million, or 23%, a 40 basis point improvement year over year. Cash at the quarter end was 105 million. So they're a lot lower on cash, but they did just acquire Northern Green Canada, and they've been focusing on the international markets as well. So yeah, that's not a boatload of cash. So we have to be prepared as these stock prices start to recover. We have to be prepared for dilution, and I mentioned that. And then, sure enough, right after OGI, we saw a pretty big bump up in share price there. They announced dilution, and then we had dilution from Canopy, where they essentially raised $50 million through an institutional investor, and Curaleaf could very well be on the horizon of doing the same, because, as we know, if they're not making a profit, right, if you're not net income positive, then you're not. There's always risk that you have to dilute, right? Maybe they get some kind of non-dilutive financing, but with interest rates the way they are, and still lack of safe banking, but there's a potential that could happen very soon as well. Uplisting to the NYSE and the Nasdaq, get the JP Morgans, the Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachs, the BlackRocks positioned, Wall Street crooks and institutions, right, the banks, and then we'll get more than likely some sort of reform, either Schedule 3 or descheduling, in my opinion. All right. So 145 U.S. retail stores across the U.S. Let's go through. So announced the acquisition of Northern Green Canada, as I mentioned, a vertically integrated Canadian EU GMP indoor MJ producer, focused primarily on solidifying our supply chain and expanding our international presence through its EU GMP certified facilities, which just means they can export to EU. Curaleaf International rebranded Sapphire Clinics to Curaleaf Clinics in the UK. Acquired Can4Med, an experienced pharmaceutical wholesaler in Poland, to enhance our market presence. Curaleaf International made its first wholesale shipment to the Czech Republic. So yeah, they acquired Northern Green Canada. Acquisition purchase price of $60 million plus an earnout. So there's the details there. Purchased for cancellation $50 million of our senior secured notes 2026 at a discount of 7.75%, saving the company $3.2 million of future interest payments. So yeah, they put some towards their debt as well. Balance sheet, the company had $105 million cash and $580.3 million of outstanding debt, net of unamortized debt discounts. So during 3 months ended March 31st, 2024, Curaleaf invested $13 million net in capital expenditures focused on cultivation, automation, and selective retail expansion in strategic markets. Shares outstanding. Shares amounted to 736,147,618. And then, yeah, the other one was multiple voting shares. So I might go back and rewatch the earnings call as well. Really like listening to Boris. And when I said that I expected April to be the most likely scenario for rescheduling announcement, Boris agreed with me. Shortly after, he came out and said that it made the most sense as well. Charts were pointing to it. On average, it takes about 6 months for the rescheduling review, and it was like, I think it was like 8 months when it came out. So 420, and then again, the same thing. HHS came out with their recommendation on August 31st, or the last day of the month, when no one expected it. And then I figured something similar with April, with 420. It come out after that. Everybody would expect it to be in April before 420, and then the media pump machine, right? And it came out on the last day of April, as I said. So starting to see what these people are up to, and the White House not commenting on it, and Ann Milgram not commenting on it. That's just intentional, ambiguous FUD, right? They're just they want you to constantly be in limbo. Like, is it happening? Is it not happening? Right? It's so obvious what they're doing, right? And they're protecting the incumbents, the big pharma, big alcohol, big tobacco, the Wall Street banks who are looking to get positioned, right? But as of right now, weekly on the MSOS ETF is looking pretty decent. We're gearing up for a bull cross on the stochastic, and the MACD is very close to seeing another bull cross after already seeing the bear cross and follow through and downside that we saw over the last couple of months. And then we got the DA news, and we're back above the 10-week moving average there as well. So I want to see it close over that 10-week moving average at 922, and let's see that follow through of the bull cross on the stochastic and then the MACD to follow. But we're also gearing up for the first ever moving average 50 weekly and 100 weekly. So those are set to potentially cross here over the next, call it several weeks, couple months. And more than likely going to be on some sort of news, safe banking. We'll see what happens with regards to this legalization bill and descheduling, whether they leave it up to the States Act. Again, check out that video that I posted today on rescheduling versus descheduling, but it's looking really good. First time in history that would occur. And also on MSOS, it was the first time in history that we confirmed a monthly uptrend. So we have our low, high of the bounce, higher low. In the month of February, we confirmed the monthly uptrend with a break of 988. So that was the first ever monthly uptrend. And we're gearing up for the first ever monthly EMA 12 and 26 bull cross. So like I said, this time's definitely different because this is the first time ever that we've done a lot of these major indicators. When it's on a monthly time frame and a monthly uptrend, first time ever on the monthly time frame, like that is very significant. And the same thing with this monthly EMA 12 and 26 bull cross and the weekly moving averages. And we also just had a golden cross of the 50 and the 200. So we back tested the 100-day moving average, held it. We're back above all of our daily moving averages, and we're above all of our weekly moving averages. So this is looking good over the next few months. And typically, everybody expects the summer to be a summer lull and a drop off in activity. It was something similar with regards to Bitcoin. Everybody thought, the halving's coming up. We're going to see all-time highs after the halving. And everybody and their dog was saying that was going to happen. And I was, okay, I'm going to flip contrarian view now. Now I'm going to expect the summertime in MJ to potentially be bullish because everybody and their dog is thinking it's going to be bearish like it always is, right? So what happens when, everybody and their dog knows something? It's usually the opposite, right? One thing we know about retail investors is they're usually wrong and they usually get the shaft. And quite often, if you just do the opposite of what you think, you do better, right? And I can't stress enough to just be super cautious with these MSOs. Like I said, I do own Green Thumb. I do own Curaleaf. Curaleaf is my second biggest holding, but you just have to be very, very cautious that you don't repeat some of the same mistakes. Because I'm seeing, I don't know how many people I've heard say, I'm selling all LPs today to buy MSOs, and then LPs were up more than MSOs. So, you really have to check in with yourself and just remember that these MSOs are going to go through a lot of the same headaches and hurdles, more than likely, than as the Canadian companies did. But I'm curious what everybody thinks of this. You think it's sustainable, and what you think of these earnings reports. We'll jump into the chat here as well. Rod the Man, Jamlosi, you. Rod the Man, God. Thank you. Hi from Texas. Hello, welcome. Castaville and John. We have Rod the MJ God. Okay, you corrected that. Hi, Serge. We got tuning in from North Carolina in the middle of the woods. Nice, Strone. Thanks for joining the live stream. I'm sure Trulieve got a boost from Florida sales. Absolutely. SNDL is growing nicely. Yeah, they did have some. They did have a very big drop off on revenue. They said it was attributed to seasonality, which I found a little bit odd. And then during the conference call, They gave us some more color. They said it also had to do with Valens acquisition and the revenue dropping off there. So they basically were cutting out revenue streams that weren't driving growth and profitability. So I knew it wasn't just seasonality. You don't see like, a drop in 40 million or like, what was it, 40, 50 million in revenue from the last quarter. You don't see, that drop just from seasonality. That didn't make sense. So that extra color there definitely helped. But yeah, not the greatest quarter for them. GTI is an absolute beast. Yep, they are definitely the leader in the space. Curaleaf in terms of, sheer revenue and run rate, but GTI in terms of profitability and overall metrics. Tilray isn't keeping up with peers, considering relocating to MSO and Sundial, making Tilray a smaller allocation. MSO uplisting could impact Tilray. Yeah, thanks for your comments, Seth and Sam. I mean, you have to do what's best for you. Personally, you don't have to. You can own more than one company too, right? Like you can, if you make it a smaller allocation, yeah, or you could put new money in. Like I'm not telling you to buy, sell, or hold, but I don't know. I can't imagine selling. If it was, back when MSOs were low and didn't run, like what was Trulieve just at? Like now you're risking jumping in and seeing a pretty hefty correction, right? So like TCNNF on the OTC. And the thing to remember is a lot of these companies, people in the U.S. can't buy them yet, because I know people in the U.S. They're like, how do I buy Curaleaf? Like it's not on my exchange or my broker. And that's because it's either OTC and some brokers don't allow it, or they're on the Canadian exchanges, which you don't have access to. So, we have no monthly support on Trulieve all the way down to 379. Look what happened the last time we had no monthly support. We went to all-time high and then we gave it all back and went to a lower low. So, again, you got to learn, you got to look at the past and learn from it. It's not always going to repeat, but it'll rhyme. And if you're not learning these lessons from previous times, and again, just like the Canadian market, all the headaches they had in rollout, right? A lot of the US companies are going to go through the same, like competition, price wars, saturation, consolidation, mergers and acquisitions, right? So CapEx and expanding across the US and the rest of the world. So, if we're not learning, you're dying essentially. If you're not learning and growing, you're dying, right? And same can be said with your, analogy can be put towards your finances and your portfolios, right? If you're not learning, if you're not growing, and you just keep kind of going through the same motions, they're just gonna rinse and repeat and drain you. But like I said, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom or spread fear or anything like that. I mean, it's facts. We have no monthly support down to 379. So if we start monthly consolidation, we lose the low of the previous monthly candle and start monthly consolidation. So last month is the low is $10. If we lose $10, we could easily pull back 60% and still be in a monthly uptrend. Like that's crazy, right? So still in a monthly uptrend after pulling back 60%. So we need already from the high here, we're now down 25%. So we could easily drop another 10, 20, 30% from here. And like I said, 60% just from losing $10 and still be in a monthly uptrend. It's actually like 63%. So I would be very cautious, right? It would be different if it was back here in October of 2023 or even, the beginning of the year in January when we're at $5. But, from the low here of August in the HHS recommendation, it's up 327%. So if you're going to sell like, a company like Tilray at the lows and then buy a company that's up 300, 400%, there's a good chance that it could pull back and then you just get wrecked again, right? So I would just be very cautious selling something at a low. That's like the last thing I would do in my like almost 20 years of investing in finance. That's just a recipe for disaster in my opinion. But you do you, and like I said, I'm not telling you to buy, sell, or hold. That's just my own thoughts and opinions. But I wish you the best. And like I said, if you haven't seen my MJ portfolio, right, I've done a video on it, 2024 update. And I'm not a maximalist. I'm not a tribalist of any, like I don't like tribalism. I don't like maximalism, like MSO gang. I hate that because it's nothing but tribalism and childishness. Like it's kind of immature in my opinion. No, that's not the one. MJ portfolio. Yeah, so this is 2024 update. So Tilray being my biggest, Curaleaf, MSOS, High Tide, Organogram, SNDL, Canopy, Canara, Cresco, AYR, Green Thumb, Oxley. So again, I would just be very, very cautious when you're going to switch things around because Again, if they were both near 52-week lows and all-time lows, then that'd be one thing. But now, if we go from the all-time high on Trulieve to where we are, we've retraced back to the 0.236. So, if we get back up to $28, then that means we retraced about 50% of that whole correction, right? And from the high to the low there, we were down 93, almost 94%. And I was screaming from the rooftops, telling people, again, if we don't learn, right? The Canadian companies were all down 80, 90%. And I was telling people, like, we have no support on the monthly all the way down here to 574, and we didn't even confirm a monthly uptrend. And everybody's like, oh, no, you're out to lunch, you're crazy. It's like, there's no way Trulieve's correcting 80 or 90% like the Canadian LP garbage LPs. And then sure enough, it went down 93%. So, again, if we're not learning, you're dying. And if you're not applying that to your portfolio, your money's dying, right? So the sector moves together, not down to the day, the second, the minute, even the week. But if you zoom out to the 12-month charts on these names, right, what does this look like? TCNNF, MSOS, similar. What does Curaleaf look like? Well, that's the wrong one there. This is the US one, OTC. So very similar, right? Even, the cream of the crop, GTBIF. Or GTII, similar, but not as much of a pullback. Okay, let's bring up Tilray. A little bit more of a pullback, but it's, kind of similar movement. Same thing with CGC. They all look very, very similar. SNDL, right? So they're all starting the yearly bounces. And then, in a year from now, we're probably all going to be up here. SNDL will probably be somewhere up here, Tilray, probably somewhere up here. And then MSOS, probably somewhere up here. Right? So the sector moves together. Like I said, it moves in tandem, and you just have to be very, very cautious. And like I said, I'm not the type of person that I'll tell you what you want to hear. I'll tell you what you need to hear, and I'll just try to be honest and give you my absolute genuine opinion, right? Because there's way too many people out there in YouTube channels where they're just feeding people full of hopium and whatever they want to hear. And I pride myself on being that voice of reason and person who, isn't just looking for clicks and views and subscribers. I could care less. What I care is being genuine and creating a loyal following and being as true and admitting when I'm wrong. I'm not always right, and it takes a bigger man or woman to say when they're wrong, right? And versus like trying to lie your way through it and whatnot. So. Speaking of being right or wrong, Jam Losi says, I think you are right about the cost. This will have to change in the U.S. Yeah, so, like I said, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Americans are just full of money, and you got more money at the end of the month than you know what to do with, and you're okay spending $400 USD, or sorry, $326 on average, or $400 USD. I know that would never fly here in Canada. People can barely afford eggs. So, bread, and people are complaining about the price of eggs and gas. So I'm pretty sure they're not going to be spending $300 or $400 on an ounce of chronic. But anyways, like I said, just be very, very cautious. Like, what's Nevada's going to be up there? Yeah, 281, 345, 325. Like, you're looking at like 10. When I was in Vegas, it was like $15 or $20 US for 1 gram. I was like, come on, like I can get like, 3.5, maybe 7 grams for that price in Canada, right? And then, like I said, now there's ounces for like $50 US, and it's actually not bad. It's like bake sale from Tilray. It's pretty decent. And I just got a 3.5 gram from Tribal for $20, and it's Quad A drip station indica 23%. Friggin' terpenes are 2.4%. Like, you should see the bud. It's crazy. Margins will compress in the U.S. Absolutely. Yeah, but that's a good point too, right, Seth, is 280E. Once that goes away, it'll fix that for sure. And 280E. But the thing is, though, is rescheduling could take a long time. It could take a very, very long time. And that's why I'm thinking, and I made this video today, that rescheduling and descheduling, could they bypass Schedule 3 and just deschedule it? I think that's very possible, because even if they go through all this rigmarole and process and, court review and all the lawsuits that could potentially come in with rescheduling, if Congress just steps in and, like, we could do it in like a relatively short period of time, like a year or two, right? And if it's an election year, so if we see Dems take control of the House and the Senate, or we get the Republicans start to take a 180, we saw them take a 180 on crypto. Trump was promoting it like crazy on his campaign trail, and all about the dollar. Now he's all about crypto. So this shows you how quickly they can change once they can use something in their favor, right? So, and plus he figured out how to make money off crypto. So there was a video with Kevin O'Leary saying, he wanted to invest in this MJ company and 11% yield or something cash. And, it's on the same list as heroin, Schedule 1. Oh, can't touch it. Lawyer said no, right? So if we get Schedule 3 or better, the Kevin O'Learys of the world are coming, the JP Morgans, the Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachses, the BlackRocks, the Van X, right? They're all coming. So this is only going to ever happen once, and you have a chance, just like crypto, to front run these institutions and to really invest like in the ground up, right at the bottom. Started from the bottom, now we're here, but yeah, I would check that out. And what I was going to say on that same thought process was, if it takes multiple years for rescheduling to go through, right? Like I said in the previous video, is to go through OMB review. That could be up to 90 days. Public comment, 30 to 90 days. Administrative hearing, if granted, several months to a year. DEA review could be several months to another year. Final review and ruling would be 30 days effective after publication. Then there's the judicial review and lawsuits, 1 to 3 years if challenged. So, and then after that, there's no precedent for the FDA to take a botanical substance and drug and reclassify it. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all goes down, and that could take a lot of money and a lot of time. So this is why I'm starting to think Germany fast-tracking Pillar 2, Phase 2, commercial sales, adult use sales, and for profit. I'm starting to think more as time goes on, it's more and more likely that descheduling is the more likely scenario than rescheduling. And a lot of MJ industry advocates and supporters and participants in the industry are thinking that, rescheduling is great, but it's not enough. And my interview with Morgan Fox, he said the same thing. If you haven't seen that, you can check out my recent video and interview with him, just right here. We talk about rescheduling, descheduling possibilities and more, and, safe banking, all the other bills, CEAOA. And he said, it probably wouldn't have that much effect with international treaties. But anyway, I'm repeating myself. Just check out that video. It's only just under 10 minutes long, so I highly encourage you to check that out. Canada needs tax reform badly. Margins are slim. Yeah, and a lot of it's like the value segment. But yeah, excise taxes, I mean, it's not all Canadian operators' fault. Canada, like Organigram and Auxly paid almost a third of their annual revenue went to excise taxes. So, something's got to give there. But I think somewhere around the same time we get the removal of 280E, we'll see improvements to excise tax in Canada, right? It's all puppet masters pulling the puppet strings. And a lot of these U.S. companies like Constellation Brands, Altria, British American Tobacco, Imperial Brands, are all invested in Canadian companies. So they're not going to want to get, they're going to lobby the Canadian government, and they're going to get some sort of reform around the same time as 280E goes away. And I'm pretty confident of that, because as we know, these big corporations get what they want, and they have the money to lobby. And, a lot of these, politicians are bought and paid for. So Zach George said that, yes, they sold 4 times more in Germany. Yeah, exactly. Rod, why should we believe Tilray still has a chance? It's underperforming peers. I'd like your insights since you believe in Tilray. Well, simple. I mean, they have number 1 market share in Germany. Germany's looking to fast track Pillar 2. Tilray has a presence in the U.S. They're the 5th largest craft brewer in the U.S. in a very short period of time. They're number 1 in Canada. Like, what's not to like? What's changed? 280. If we get rescheduling, that could open up medical in the U.S. If we get full-blown descheduling and then import-export, I mean, the sky's the limit. And then Tilray's, through their Tilray Medical, they have, I think, over 1,000 pharmacies. I think it's 13,000 or something like that pharmacies. They have their Manitoba Harvest, their hemp business, their beverage brands. They're number 1, their MJ brands, coming out with a bunch of new products. And Redican itself is a massive asset and brand. So, I think people are just looking at share price, and they're not, share price is the last thing you want to look at when you're evaluating the a company, right? If you want to look at multiples and enterprise value, things like that, but share price, Amazon dropped 95% after the .com days and had its financial troubles during the .com boom. And then they dropped 95%. I bet you a lot of people saying that Jeff Bezos should have been fired too, right? And they almost went under, right? Tesla almost went bankrupt if it weren't for the SEC and them bending the knee. Apple almost went bankrupt. Microsoft invested $150 million into them. So, and they weren't selling a Schedule 1 narcotic, right? I really don't understand how people don't get this. But anyway, it really is just share price, right? People, it's whatever direction things are going. People think the company's worse now. And it's nothing has changed. If anything, it's getting better for Tilray. It's just the share price isn't showing that, right? But if Tilray are at $10 now, everybody in the stream would be saying Tilray's the best company, the best run, Irwin's the best CEO. So I think it's mostly just attributed to share price, right? And that's the last thing that you have to look like. Tesla ranged, I think, for like 2,000 days or something like that. It was like going sideways for like 2,000 days before it had the massive breakout. And, all the mainstream media was saying, oh, they'll never turn a profit. They're going to go bankrupt. They make less cars in a year than Toyota makes in a month. And then here we are. They're, lo and behold, is worth more than all the automakers combined, right? And again, they're not selling Schedule 1 narcotics on the same list of heroin. Some countries offering the death penalty, right? Like we're not comparing apples to apples here, no pun intended. It's a very different business, and this is only ever going to happen once. So you're almost so early to the party, it's offensive to the host. Let's see where I'm at. Meanwhile, Tilray is still sleeping. Yeah, well, we could see any time now where MedMen's going through the liquidation process and bankruptcy filing. So we know they had their convertible debt, and they continue to mention MedMen on the calls. So that could be their entryway, an SPV, special purpose vehicle, into the U.S., potentially following the footsteps of Canopy and SNDL through some sort of exchangeable share or special purpose vehicle, right? And that news could come any day. Germany looking to fast track Pillar 2, the rest of the EU, like... I really don't understand. Like nothing has changed fundamentally from Tilray, only but for the better. The only thing that has changed is the share price, and then therefore people start to question the viability of the company and long-term success. Right? The whole sector is undervalued. Absolutely. Again, what's going to happen when they legalize at the U.S. federal level? It's going to be 5 to 10 years before we hit critical mass and hit that S-curve adoption. Right? Like we're not even halfway through the first inning. Like the rest of the EU, the rest of the world, like. What happens when it's treated as an agricultural commodity, right? Yes, Seth, but Tilray is the worst performing among MJ peers. Check 1 year chart for all of them. Well, I just brought that up. They're all the same. Look at MSOS. It's literally the same. 12 months, it's down. It was down 91%. Okay, now let's bring up Tilray. It looks the same. The same period, it was down 97. Okay, 91, 97. So if you had 100 grand, you're at 9 grand or what, 3 grand left. So if you bought at the peak, it's all bad. Like if it's down 91% or 97%, pick your poison. Like it's all relative, right? It's all the same really at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure if you lost 90% or 97% of your money, you're just going to be equally as mad. And then, yeah, CGC, same thing. It's all crater, like new lows, right? And then even Trulieve. Very similar. But yes, they're starting to bounce more. But you got to keep in mind, too, is that these companies are not listed on the U.S. major exchanges. Which companies, and when you get the short data, which companies are the most heavily shorted? Not the OTC names, not the names on the CSE, right? It's the names that are on the NASDAQ, right? Because that's where the big money plays, right? The JP Morgans, the Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachs, the BlackRocks, the Van Eck, the big Wall Street institutions and banks. And they're shorting the hell out of these Canadian companies, right? But eventually tides will turn, scales will tip, and that's why we're not seeing as much volume and shorts on some of these U.S. names, and that's why they're recovering quickly. They're late to the dilution party. Market cap is still huge. Okay, I'm going to digress from Tilray because this isn't a Tilray video, and we've been spending a lot of time on that. But the fact, like that alone tells you, like if I'm doing a US MSO video on 3 companies, Green Thumb, Trulieve, and Curaleaf, and my comments are just polluted with Tilray, might there be some value to that? Like, why are people always talking about it? Even if it's good or bad, right? I think that's a net positive overall. If I was Tilray, I'd be like, wow, you see this guy doing a live stream and talking about 3 U.S. companies and all they can talk about is us? Go us. We must be doing something right. Like, geez. Sleeping giant, wake up soon. Yeah, I bet. I agree. Chamlosi, market cap is huge, as you mentioned, suggesting it's overvalued compared to its revenue and market cap sundial. Which one is more likely to increase? Yeah, like obviously lower floats increase more, but, like I said, Budweiser has a market cap like 114 billion. They got like just under 2 billion shares, right? Doesn't matter. It's simple. If there's more demand versus supply, number go up. Simple as that. Doesn't matter how many shares, how much float. Long term, are you here for a quick buck, taco gains? Are you here for, try to get rich quick? Or are you here for the long term? Are you investing in this industry for 5, 10, 20 years, right? Like if you invested in Amazon not selling Schedule 1 narcotics, same as heroin, and they almost went bankrupt, Apple almost went bankrupt, Tesla almost went bankrupt, not selling Schedule 1 narcotics, and stock prices dropping 80, 90%, you're probably not going to make it. And you didn't buy Amazon in the early days and get rich in 5, 10 years. It took a long time, right? I agree 100%, Rod. They just keep saying that summer is going to be dead for MJ, and I started to believe the opposite. Well, yeah, show me the chart. I'll tell you the news. And charts are starting to look fantastic. I own more Tilray than SNDL because I believe it's lagging and it will see sunshine and rainbows. Ignore the negativity out there. I own both nevertheless. Yeah, same here. What do you think of impending SNDL 21 and 55 weekly EMA cross? So SNDL confirmed a monthly uptrend, and it's gearing up for the first ever monthly EMA 12 and 26 bull cross. So it's seeing a lot of bull crosses, and even on the weekly time frame, we're gearing up for the second ever 50 and 100 weekly bull cross, and it's probably going to be a long time before it happens because they're so far apart, but 50 and the 200 first ever in history. But yeah, as of the weekly, it's the weekly, right? So if something is on a weekly or monthly time frame, it only happens once every few years and maybe longer. So yeah, those are very significant patterns and indicators to be watching. It's all about that 340 level for Tilray. Yeah, that's monthly uptrend. If we break that, most MJ companies confirm their monthly uptrends. Yeah, but guess what? CGC, everybody's talking about how good CGC is. CGC is in a monthly downtrend still. Look, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Anything under 1920 is just a monthly lower high and a monthly downtrend. So actually, technically speaking, CGC is one of the weakest of the weak. It's still in a monthly downtrend. We still have to come down, form a higher low, and then a higher high. Get our higher low, and then our higher high. The higher low will begin once we lose the low of the previous candle, which this month it would be 609. We'd have to lose 609, come down here, form a higher low, somewhere around $4, $5, then potential for a higher high. So, if you bring up a name like Tilray, for example, Tilray's already got its low high. It has its higher low. So CGC's here, but it's in a monthly downtrend, similar to what Tilray was here. But now we're essentially just flat because we did break that lower high, lower low pattern, but we have already got our higher low. CGC still needs this here and then this here, which is the higher high. So technically Tilray could confirm a monthly uptrend at any time, really, whereas CGC would need to pull back for a monthly higher low and then a higher high. So it's at least a couple months away before confirming a monthly uptrend, at least 1 or 2 months on CGC at the bare minimum. But then you got names like SNDL who are in a monthly uptrend as well. So you have your low, high, higher low, and higher high. And then high tide, monthly uptrend, low, high, higher low, and higher high. GTBIF, low, high, higher low, and higher high. Very strong over its monthly EMA 12s and 26 EMAs. And then we're seeing a bull cross of those EMAs as well on the monthly time frame, which would be the first time in history as well. And it's above its monthly EMA 26. So a lot of these names, right, are starting to get back above their EMA 26 on the monthly time frame. So is Trulieve. So if Trulieve, Green Thumb is doing it, Curaleaf, CURLF. So if we were to do something similar, yeah, it's already over it as well. And very close to seeing those bull crosses. So I'm thinking we could see like uplisting soon. Safe banking, this whole federal legalization and descheduling start to gain some traction. And then there's a bunch of stuff that we never even factored in yet. Like keep in mind, as of Schedule 3, potentially in all this HHS recommendation and 250 plus pages of research and science and evidence that it's medicine. You're Kevin O'Leary's who said, I can't touch MJ stocks because my lawyer said, no, don't do it. It's still on the same list as heroin. So you got to think like all these big companies and people and investors and gurus, right? Moguls, they're going to all be coming. They're running. They're foaming at the mouth. They just can't get in yet, right? So we're so early, it's not even funny. And MSOS is not above its monthly EMA 26 yet. So if all these other names that are big weightings in MSOS, it's just leaders and laggards. If we do it, GTBIF, Curaleaf, and Green Thumb, Curaleaf, and Trulieve, we'd be somewhere around that $15 area, right? Looks like a weekly loss. Looks like a rocket absolutely ready to take off. Yep. I'd be more scared if Tilray was still printing lower lows in a higher time frame. I almost forget this is a US MSO earnings video, but hey bro, how are you? Good. Good, Carmine. Hope you're doing well. We are here for uplisting and 280E removal. Then the games begin and M&A becomes interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I agree, Seth. Still so much growth. Thanks, Rod, for all the work and time. Wishing you and your family, including your newborn, all the best. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Same to you. Yeah, she's growing, almost 4 months old now, so keep up the positivity, bro. It's all a matter of time. Think long term. It helps with the current low prices. Absolutely. Agreed. We should be positive. Yeah, I mean, there's enough to be positive about, and while I said I wasn't gonna talk about it anymore, I mean, like Tilray, at the end of the day, there's just leaders and laggards, and I said it with OGI as well. When OGI was running, I said we still need to form a monthly higher low and higher high, similar to what CGC still has to do, right? It looks very similar. Coming off the low, big move, we still need the higher low and higher high in a monthly downtrend still. OGI was in a monthly downtrend, but once we broke resistance here at $2, that was no longer a monthly downtrend. Trend was flat. We weren't in an uptrend or a downtrend. And then I said, no support to 97 cents, and we hit 291. We could pull back. Well, and that's exactly what we're looking for, is this low, high, higher low, and higher high. Just realized that I had it all drawn out there, but I'm going to remove that. So, we're just looking for this higher low and higher high. And this is why I warned people about OGI when we said we had this low and high, higher low. We were gearing up for a pretty hefty pullback. And here we are from the top to where we are now. We're down 40%. And we could still continue to pull back from here as we have no support all the way down to 97 cents on the monthly. And we're below all of our EMAs on the monthly, weekly. Could see an EMA 12 and 26 bear cross as well on the weekly, meaning more downside. So again, it's just leaders and laggards. And like I said, CGC still has yet to even confirm a monthly higher low. So once it starts to form a monthly higher low and pull back, that's when we could start to see money rotate into other names that have yet to confirm their monthly uptrend, like Tilray. So you can just do Tilray divided by CGC, and you can see here on the daily time frame, we're actually looking to confirm a daily uptrend with a higher low and a higher high. We could see an EMA 12 and 26 bull cross as well. That'd be the first time since, well, realistically, the major one was way back in December of 2023. So we could start to see Tilray outperform some of these Canadian names as some of these Canadian names start to look for their monthly higher lows and Tilray starts to get its higher high. But yeah, MSOS, same thing there, right? It was the same thing. It was GTI or Green Thumb. We'll bring up GTBIF actually. So look at this. So GTBIF, low, high, higher, low. It confirmed its monthly uptrend in January of this year. Let's take a look at AYR. When did it confirm its monthly uptrend? So low, high, higher, low, higher, high. It confirmed it in September of 2023. What was it doing in January? It was actually down about 45%, right? So that profit taking, leaders and laggards, went into GTBIF, right? But still maintained its monthly uptrend and just higher lows and higher highs, gearing up for another EMA 12 and 26 bull cross on the monthly time frame. Okay, then what happened to Curaleaf? Same deal. Low, high, higher, low. It confirmed an uptrend in September of 2023 as well before GTBIF. And then in January, again, we were down. So we were down 32%, almost 33%. So it's just leaders and laggards and rotation, right? Not down to the day, the second, the minute, the week. But, on a monthly, yearly time frame, these names all start to look the same. And then Trulieve didn't confirm its monthly uptrend until January of 2024 as well. And now we're starting to see one by one names in the space confirm monthly uptrends. And then it's usually the tier ones, and then the smaller start to confirm later on. Acreage, very similar to Canopy, where it still hasn't even confirmed a higher low and higher high yet. This move's all coming off the low. So there's a reason for that, right? It's because Canopy's going to own it, so they're very similar, very samey, because they're basically the same company, right? It's public. They've already acquired or exercised their options to acquire Jetty and Wana, but Acreage is public, so it's taking a little bit longer to finalize that. But here's another example. Cresco hasn't even confirmed a monthly uptrend yet. So low, high, higher, low. We're looking for the higher high. So we might start to see, Trulieve come down for a monthly higher low, and maybe that money rotates into Cresco, and Cresco starts to confirm a monthly uptrend, right? Where is the other one? I was thinking of another company. Anyway, you get the point, right? So just leaders and laggards. That's why I bought more OGI and Tilray, because they are lagging. Absolutely. Yeah. And just like knowing charts, or not even, you don't even have to know everything about charts. If you just pop in RSI, learn what an uptrend and a downtrend is, that's very beneficial. And then you can always come join Pow Group for a week free trial as well. If you go to powgroup.ca or pursuitofwealthgroup.com, click on free trial, no credit card or anything needed, and you can come check us out for a week and bounce ideas off of almost 50 people that we have in there. Right? It's just people have different strengths, and we bounce ideas off. It's all we do is day in, day out talk about game plans and sharing ideas and learning from one another, right? And if you're not entirely sure, like I had a Pow Group member today say, "Oh, CGC and I forget the other one, but he said CGC confirmed an hourly uptrend or hourly trend change." I said, "Oh no, it just started the hourly bounce. It hasn't formed the higher low and higher high yet. It's still quite a ways away from confirming the trend change." He's like, "Oh, I realized today that I was conflating bounce with trend change, an uptrend." He was conflating the two, mixing them up, bounce and uptrend. But to him, he thought he was right. He thought he understood it perfectly fine, right? So if you don't have that person there I can't tell you how many times that happened to me when I was learning charts. I was like, "Oh yeah," I went like a whole year thinking I knew what it was, and then like one day it just clicked, and I was like, "Oh, I had it all wrong." But like in my brain, it seemed right? But I didn't have anybody there to tell me, like, "Oh no, it's actually this." And I was like, "Oh," so it's having the people you can bounce ideas off of too, like whether it just be like learning or before you hit the buy or sell button, not sure where to put your stop loss, that kind of thing, right? All right. It was an absolute pleasure, everybody. Thanks for joining and sticking with me for over an hour here today. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate a like, subscribe if you're new, and share the video with your network. And like I said, I really do appreciate all the support, and it's been a journey. It really is so early on in the game, though, and there's a lot of things to look forward to and be excited about in the MJ industry, and I'm here for it. Can't wait to be just experiencing it with you all. And like I said, as long as I'm alive, I'll be making videos covering this plant medicine of the future, amazing industry, and just very grateful to be here experiencing it with each and every one of you. All right, hope you have a great night. It's Rod with Pow Group. Thanks again for joining us in the Pursuit of Wealth, and we'll see you on the next video.